Welcome to Creativity-Hive's weekly show. I'm Miriam Haugen. We help budding videographers to achieve massive editing skills with one-on-one teaching and live group coaching in Adobe's Premiere Pro and After Effects. And today we are talking with James Strawn, who is an insider with Adobe, so we can get all the inside scoop here. Expert in Mogrts, I understand, and Premiere Pro.
I try to be. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, James. So I'm always interested in knowing how, what is your position with Adobe, and how did you get from point A to where you are today?
Well, I'm currently a software product quality specialist. So it took me a while to craft that title, but that's what I do. I'm in quality assurance, really, is what it boils down to. My background in college was I was an art major. I was in illustration, drawing, painting. Really during the university years, almost all just traditional. I used Photoshop and Illustrator very on before I went to the university level at my community college in San Diego. That was about 89, 90. And that's when I got my fingers on Adobe stuff, because Illustrator was just a couple of years old and Photoshop came out while I was there. And I learned graphic design on the old Mac box. In fact, if you ever go to my Facebook page, my profile is me sitting in the old Mac lab there in San Diego. So then I went on through the university level and learned, drawing and painting. And then after graduation from college, I moved up to Silicon Valley, and through contacts that I had there, I got into the video game industry, first as a tester. So that was when I first learned that quality assurance testing was a thing, was a job that people would pay you for. And it was a lot of fun right out of college to just be testing video games. I was like, wow, this is really cool. It wasn't what I planned to do. I thought I was going to get out of college and become a freelance illustrator and designer. And you know what? That's really hard. And so anyways, being in testing was a good place for me to start. I really enjoyed it. At that same company in the video game industry, I did get a job as an artist. So again, it was cool to be, oh, here I am. My job title is artist. So I would make textures and design layers, mostly racing games. I don't know if anyone remembers the Test Drive series on PlayStation. But we made that was back when it was still the PlayStation 1 with little 8x8 texture blocks. That's all we had to work with for the PlayStation. So I did that for a few years. I really enjoyed it. It turns out it just wasn't a good career fit for me long-term, being in video games. I wanted to get out of it. And, I looked into animation. I even interviewed with Pixar at one point. But it turned out, as I was getting serious about looking for jobs, a recruiter got me in touch with Adobe. And I had remembered Adobe, and I always loved Adobe from my earliest college days. And I thought, oh, they make the coolest stuff. If I can't be, a freelance artist or animator of what I want to be, I can work on the tools and still get to do cool stuff. And that is really exactly what happened. I was hired as a contractor by the Illustrator team. This was April of 2000. So I was hired on the Illustrator team to work with SVG, which SVG is still around. It won't go away. It's still used a lot. Back then it was a new standard, a way to view. We were just making a viewer for SVG, vector graphics. And so anyways, that was my start at Adobe. And so I was hired there as a result of my art background, my design background. They wanted someone to come onto the SVG group who could create content and really push the boundaries of what SVG could do. And we did that. We did some cool stuff where I made a virtual, like a vector, a fully vectorized little miniature comic book. And we got it all to be, displaying and interactive right there in the web browser. It was like Netscape. It was like Netscape. And I can't remember, Mozilla was, this was all so early still. And we were competing with Flash back then. That was before Adobe even thought of acquiring Macromedia. Anyways, I was on that team. I had always wanted to get into video. Back in college, I would make videos with 2 VCRs, and my VHS camera, and use the 2 VCRs to do my cutting. That's all I had available, and so you end up with a third generation, like, lousy picture. But I could get I would make travel videos and stuff, and people loved it. It looked horrible and didn't sound very good either, but got the job done. Anyways, that was igniting my love for video and motion. So after a few years, being here at Adobe on the Illustrator team, and then on Photoshop for a while, Photoshop Album, actually, which became part of Photoshop Elements. Long story. I leapfrogged from team to team, and then I was brought into the Premiere world, the video world, by friends of mine that I still work with today. Interviewed me, and I had enough, obviously a lot of QA experience by then, and experience doing video, imaging, many things across the different apps I had worked on here at Adobe as an employee. So they brought me in, and we developed what became the first version of Premiere Elements. Which back then was a big effort. Premiere Elements still exists, by the way. They still make at least one version a year, and I haven't heard of it going away. It's completely separate from Rush, from Premiere, from any of that. But they still make it. And I have friends that use it on their own videos at home, and they love it because they don't have to have a subscription. I'm not trying to sell Premiere Elements, but it's still out there. Anyways.
Yeah, you might get in trouble if you say, "Oh, don't have to have a subscription."
Well, I tell friends that if you want to stick with Adobe stuff, and you just need basic video editing, Premiere Elements is still out there, and it can do a ton of stuff. Anyways, it's no secret. So I worked on that for a few years. I think we worked on the first 2 or 3 full versions that all got kind of sent away from us over to teams overseas. But those of us on the core team, most of us were brought into the Premiere Pro team. This is about 2004. So I was on Premiere Pro team a long time, and I did actually branch off for a while. I went to some other sort of in-house startups. There was a product called Thermo that was going to be a motion graphics app aimed at consumer level stuff. That never actually came to market in that form, but it came to market in other forms. Like, for example, Spark is sort of based on the same thing that we had started back then. Anyways, I hopped around from team to team, and this was the time that I moved here. I moved from San Jose headquarters office out here to where I live in Colorado, in a small town, in 2008. And that same time is when I was hopping around from team to team to team. And it was getting pretty scary because all these products kept going away.
Yeah.
Right after I'd spend 6 months or a year trying to, start them up, they'd go away. And I'm out here all by myself. And it was scary for a while. But, the management was really good, finding a place for me. And they knew that things weren't going away. It wasn't my fault. I was just, I was taking risks. I was getting on new things. I was wanting to develop new things. So my managers always found a way to keep me around. And then eventually, I think around 2010 or so, they brought me back into the core team, and I got to test Morph Cut, optical flow. I don't know how many people I think Morph Cut is still used quite a lot. Anyways, I just worked on some really cool features for a while. and was kind of delving into a lot of different things, but I was still very much in Premiere. And then about 5 years ago, I reached out to Mike Berry, who is my current manager on the motion graphics team, and he was starting up an effort to basically modernize the titler. And it was going to be it was going to be for Premiere and also for Rush. And also even they had mentioned something about After Effects. So I was like, oh, cool. I can be, because I always wanted to do not just video. I always really wanted to get into After Effects and be, because that's more where my background is. It's not so much video. It's more imaging and motion graphics. That's my Illustrator background and my traditional art background. So I was like, oh, cool. I'll get into it and it'll involve all these things. So I did, and I was on the team that got the first version of what we now know as Essential Graphics running. And then about that time is when motion graphics templates, Mogrts, started becoming a thing too. So I didn't learn about them until I was already on the graphics engine team is what we call it, or what we called it back then. Now we call it the motion graphics team. So I learned as I went, but that's where I am now. I've been here for 5 years in this group. We call ourselves the motion graphics team. Really, we are the Mogrts team. And hopefully people are familiar with our features by now across After Effects and Premiere and Rush, allowing people to build and use really cool graphics across apps without having to be an expert in After Effects or even in Premiere necessarily.
Well,
that's my story.
Awesome. I'm going to bring Mo and Neil on.
Okay.
Because I'll bet they have all kinds of questions to ask here.
Hi, James.
Hi.
Hello.
Hopefully they're not After Effects expressions questions.
That would be Mo.
I'm going to hold myself back. Pretty interesting, the PlayStation analogy. I played it, so that it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can't believe you were part of it. That's amazing.
Oh, my kids are still, sorry, my kids are still way more impressed by that part of my career than anything else.
I'm sure. So am I. I've been to have worked on Sony's stuff, and it was pretty cool. I have a very simple question. It's how do you feel, from the GET team, the graphics engine team, like you said, the GET team, right, to now the motion graphics team? How do you feel the future of Mogrts is headed? Given the limitations in technology, the Mercury playback engine, how After Effects talks. I know there's a lot of stuff that you can't talk about, but
yeah.
Do you feel it's going to? Let me make it really simple. Do you think Mogrts are going to speed up in Premiere's timeline? That's simple as I can make it.
And there's so much going on right now, and I wish I could talk about it. And I don't even know what they need to keep secret. If it were up to me, none of it would be secret. We would just talk about it. But I guess there's stuff that can actually affect stock prices and things. So I always err on the side of caution and don't go into it. But I will say that, there's just a huge user need for template-driven graphics, and it's going to go beyond just, here's a nice animated graphic that I can change where it says producer name and put in my own name and change the type and some of the colors and things like that. I mean, that's will continue to be a big part of it, but it's also just a ton more opportunities with what it can do, not just titles, but any kind of graphics, transitions. We've already put in infographics, that's been around for a couple of years. This last year, we had a huge effort doing media replacement. So, now it allowed them not just to customize their graphics, but to customize, actual still and video content that's in there. There's more and more possibilities and more user needs for template driven I mean, people can only do so much with just video. I mean,
yes.
You can take a really nice video and you can always improve the quality of your lighting and the composition and all that. But it's still, at the end of it, is still just going to be a chunk of, 24 frames per second
Absolutely.
of whatever the camera was pointed at. So to go beyond that without having, like a Hollywood production company at your disposal, people really look to motion graphics to really up the production value of their stuff without having to have a big budget and lots of resources. So it's a huge need, huge user need, and we will see more and more needs and things around, just, I'll just say, more interactivity, more customizable, changeable things, better, simpler yet more powerful user interfaces for things. Just tons more on our plate. It's far from being where we go, well, we made Mogrts, people have them now. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. As we put more out, there's more on our to-do list.
That's fantastic.
I still, of course, have been arguing to get a shapes library in the essential graphics panel like the old Titler had. I don't want to go back to the old Titler. I was very happy to move on to the EGP as soon as it came up. With that one exception is we need a shapes library. And that's one of those things that I've talked with Wes and Trent and several of the other guys and Francis and Dacia, and of course mentioned to you before, that I don't even understand how this was not part of the initial panel to have a shapes library. I mean, it's such an obvious thing. If you're doing graphics, you need shapes to put together. Well, you can make an arrow. Yeah, the work to make an arrow in the EGP right now involves doing about 4 or 5 shapes, spinning them, rotating them in exactly the same way, and then using one to mask another shape and making this into a group and everything. How about just giving us a bloody arrow,
Yeah, Just... So by shapes library, you're talking about the different shapes tools inside the legacy titler, right?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. You had arrows, you had circles.
I don't remember. I don't think an arrow is in there, at least not in the ones that I was looking at.
I haven't seen an arrow myself, but
that's a good argument.
Right. There wasn't an actual arrow in there, but it was close.
Okay, I mean that's a good argument for it. Because arrows something that you can't draw on your own. But yeah, I'm looking at it right now. There's rounded rectangles. There's like an octagon thing. There's rounded corner rectangles, arcs. There's a bunch of shape tools in there that we don't have in Essential Graphics. I will say that we've made some improvements to the pen tool. Which will at least let you, like shift modifiers to constrain your, up until this last release, 15.1, I think it was, you couldn't even draw a straight line. Like by straight, I mean a flat line constrained to 0 or 90 or 45. You couldn't do that with Essential Graphics until just this most recent release.
And that's been a pain up the...
Yeah, so it's in there now. Just hold down shift and it'll constrain.
Cool.
Click once to draw a point, move over, hold down shift and click again, and it will draw a constrained line between the two, which is something that obviously is 101. We should have just had it. But, it's just we didn't get it done until Margaret's the developer I work with. We just didn't get it done until we had another innovation week this past summer that gave us a week to just work on whatever we wanted. And we said, hey, let's do that, because we had been working on pieces of it for so long, and we finally got it done. Anyways, that's kind of how it goes. Sometimes stuff just, we know that we want to do it, we know that users want it, all that, but it doesn't happen because everything just has to get prioritized.
Yeah.
But we really do appreciate it when people tell us, it's okay to be like, this is irritating. Why can't I do this? Like, we like hearing that. I mean, as long as you're not completely antagonistic about it. And like, I don't know how to say it nicely. I mean, there have been some users that we've dealt with that were so combative on certain things, and we were doing our best to listen and say, hey, we want to hear your feedback, but they would get so combative at times we had to just be like, we can't be responding to them, because it just would, take a morale hit and take up a bunch of time, so I know this is what you called me here to talk about, but we really appreciate user voice stuff, or users that we can get information from directly. And it's okay to tell us about the things that you hate as well as the things that you want. We just ask that people can be civil about it.
One of the things that I got told by one of the QC engineers for Premiere at the last live Max was that the engineers really appreciate my bug and irritation reports, because they have enough detail in them that they can actually see what's going on, because so many of the ones they get are just somebody saying, this is irritating, fix it. And how do you know exactly what they're irritated by, what they want fixed and everything? And mine give them a context and the details. And okay, so the thing is bloody long, but it's specific enough they can read through it and go, oh, yeah, we can. I can replicate that. Yeah, I can see what he means.
Yeah,
and
I'm glad you brought that up, Neil. And you've been a really good example about it. So maybe people can, if they see your posts, they can see how you do it and emulate it. What we need, what we're looking for when we go into UserVoice or one of the public forums. It's okay when people have a workflow thing. They're like, I can't get this done. How do I do this? Like there's a place for that too, where you're just asking how to get something done. You just don't understand the feature enough. That's fine. But what's difficult for us, and I'll get to what we're looking for. So what's difficult for us is when we get a problem report that sounds like this. I'm on Premiere and I'm using some reference to a tool that we can't even understand what they mean. Yeah. I'm using the automatic text tool or something, like I don't know what that is, and it crashed. I wanted to try, I'm sorry. I feel bad, but there's nothing I can do with that. And so we're always looking for, and we will reach out to those people and say, can you tell us more about how it crashed and, what was going on? What we're looking for is, here are these steps that you need to take. And if needed, here is the media you need to use with those steps. Because if it involves media and we don't have the media, we can't do anything with it. And here is the result. Okay. So the dream user voice or forum report, which is less than 1% of the time we get these, is something that I can read, and then I can get whatever they attached, if it's media, or find something, get everything in place, set up the little test environment that they've explained through their steps, and then go and do it on my computer and send it to the developer, and they can do it on their computer. That's the ideal case. When we get things like that, it's usually a bug that we can fix within a couple of days. Like, it's that easy when we get a report with those things. It's rare. It's rare that we get them, and we look every day at things and try to repro whenever we can. But if we don't have an in-house repro, it's like you're driving your car and you walk over to the mechanics and your car's not even there, and you're explaining to them the noise you heard. What's the mechanic going to do? Yeah. But if you bring him the car and say, turn and hold the steering wheel all the way over to the right and turn in 3 circles, and you hear this loud clicking, he's going to know right where to look to find that problem. He'll probably find it within a few hours, or if not quicker. It's the same exact way in software engineering. We need to see the problem ourselves, or we need to see where it's coming from so that we can spot where the problem is, and then it's just as easy as changing the part out, right? Changing that piece of the code.
Yeah, and you can have all kinds of things like this. Like up on my upper screen at the moment, you can see this Max Mogrts thing playing here. Well, this one is reworked because we had this other one that Mo had done, and you notice we've got just that the color bars background there, and we couldn't get it, and so we brought in Dacia, and she says, "Oh, okay, that's because of X," and was able to fix it. But that's the kind of thing that where both the playback of that. This was Mo created this in After Effects, and it's got a background video of this animation here and 4 inlaid videos on top of it. So it's kind of, it has a little bit of complexity to it. But getting something so you can make it in After Effects, deploy it through a library, and have it just work is really important. And it was nice to get the explanation from Dacia as to why this didn't work and why her modified version did. So we were able to do it correctly now. But when it's something that even Mo and I are struggling with getting it working, it's one of those things where you're going, yeah, there's some things here that could be a little more obvious to the user somehow or whatnot, and I don't even always know how to get that done. But that's
I think with the example that Neil is talking about now, this particular one is for Mac's presentation. So when we tested it, we had the most weird of bugs. It's just kind of ridiculous what happened. So we reached out, and Darcy got onto a call with us, and she kind of fixed it and etc. But when I got onto a call with her again, and funnily enough, my exported QuickTime movie played on my machine and everyone else's machine, but refused to play on hers. And that's the weirdest bug I've ever seen in my life, because it's not OS based. It has Catalina and Big Sur change some sort of thing in the codec, which I'm not aware of it. So there was really no solution. She says she's going to have a chat with the engineers and have a look at QA and see what's going on, because there's been some buggy issues with replacement media. So what I've done in the interim is try to find a workaround, I guess, and just drop it into an H.264 MP4 file, really, and that pretty much took care of that. So it's great that the QA engineers are there to listen to it. My next kind of little question would have been, do you feel that responsive design Mogrts, right? So responsive design, auto resizing, etc., are going to be made easier to end users to be able to create? Because right now you need, responsive design, you need JavaScript, you really need to know your expressions, etc. Do you think there is a possible way for it to become somewhat simpler for an end user to create his own responsive designs without having, to have a graduate degree in JavaScript, as an example? So I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen, but I'm hoping that happens, because responsive design is the way to go in Mogrts.
It depends on what you want to be responsive and how much response you need. We already have simple responsive design for Premiere Graphics,
right?
Which is intro, outro, and spatial, pinning, what we call pinning, responsive design for position, responsive design for time. And those are just as simple as hot text sliders that you move back and forth, or simple UI buttons that you click on. In Premiere, there's very little to learn for responsive design. And then over on AE, we have the simplest form. We called it Taffy when we were developing, but again, it's protected regions, so that the front and end of your graphic can stay fixed, for like your intro and your outro, and then it will stretch the keyframes in between as needed. So we have all that. That's simple. But in terms of wanting to make all these different aspects of the design, that the After Effects, not just the design elements, but all of the motion involved in there, making all of that responsive. We certainly have a goal of making things as easy as possible, but there's no end to. Users will always make their stuff way more complex than what we can keep up with, to allow users to be able to easily change those complex things without having to be the After Effects artists in the first place.
Mhm.
I could say more about it, but I don't, I don't want to take too much time on just
Sure.
anything.
That's
But
fine.
yeah,
Absolutely. Great.
okay.
Well, I hope somebody comes up with like an EGP panel, they come up with a responsive design panel that sits inside a panel inside After Effects that, is hard coded in. But, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. And by the way, I'm glad you had Dacia on that. Dacia is really the After Effects. She's way more versed, and I mean, she came out of the After Effects team, just like I came out of the Premiere team.
Mhm.
I'm still learning After Effects.
After Effects is so complex.
I mean, even David Simons is learning After Effects still. But yeah, it's a good. Again, these are really good requests. We'd love to hear them. That one in particular, I know that we know about, but when I hear users ask for things, I write them down and I report them to the team.
Awesome. Thanks, James. That pretty much answers the question. Thank you very much.
So I have a really basic question. So if somebody's having a problem, how do they ask that question? And I think I know the answer. They go to the Adobe forums, right?
Yeah, I mean that's one way. I mean, go to Max and meet the right person. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I look at UserVoice more than anything. We have a Slack channel that actually feeds everything that anyone posts on UserVoice under Essential Graphics bucket. Whenever anyone posts on there, it goes to a Slack channel that we have. So we have a feed going on all the time, and we can all there's 3 or 4 of us that keep a pretty close eye on it. So that's how we get. I mean, I'll just be honest and say if you want to get the attention of someone on the product team, you're going to get it quicker through
That way.
UserVoice, Essential Graphics, particularly on our product team. You'll get our attention quicker that way. We try to check the forums, but there's several of them now. There's the Adobe Public Forum. There's the Adobe Beta Prime Forum, which is for anyone using publicly available beta builds. And then there's the private beta forum, which is for people like Neil that are part of our pre-release plan. There's some people like that. It's kind of changed now that we have Beta Prime. Okay, let me explain some things. Okay, so for years we would develop all these features in a cave, basically in secret, and then we would market it, and then we would launch it, and then everyone would get the new features. Within just the last couple of or 3 years, we went to a public beta forum, and now that changed 2 things. It changed how often we release. We release almost once a month now, publicly, and I'm talking an actual public release once a month. We release beta builds every day, or every day that they don't fail. And these are Beta Prime. These are publicly available. So anyone that doesn't mind having non-release software on their system can grab a beta build for free and use it. And you get to see the features, whatever we have open. Now, there are things that we still have to keep closed because they're either too messy or they're things that we're not ready to reveal. And those we put behind feature flags that we have as engineers and quality people have the ability to turn them on. But the reason I'm going into all of this, I'm not sure why, but there's all these different forums that you can report on, and it's hard for us to monitor all of them all of the time. But like I said, UserVoice is the one that we do look at every day. I try to go in and look at the Beta Prime forums every day. And also, okay, so I guess what I'm doing is advertising the beta program. We also post to the beta forum when we have a new feature. Like, for example, a month or 2 ago, we added rounded corners for your backgrounds. So you can turn on a background box and then We allowed users to give them rounded corners. And when we turned that feature on so that beta users would be able to see it, we posted in the beta forum announcing it and saying, please, let's discuss and get your feedback directly. So on the beta forum, there are actually times where we announce a feature way before we release it and basically beg people to try it and tell us how they like it.
Well, yeah, you've done that with the text, with the captioning, with the HDR changes.
Yeah.
There's now some color space controls and overrides by sequence that have been brought in through there, where you've had those posts where you've asked people to try it in the beta build and see what they think.
And legacy
and you've gotten a lot of information from people there.
Yeah, we have. They're useful. But I'm just like, since the question was how do you get a hold of people, these are the ways. Get on UserVoice and get on the beta program if you can. I mean, I know some people don't have 5 computers around like I do, and they don't really want to run beta software on their one precious system. But if you can, get on the beta program. And Legacy Titler is another one that we announced early, Neil. And ask for feedback on. So that's all. And that goes directly to us on the product team. I mean, we announce it ourselves. We check it every day ourselves. So it's as practically as good as being in the room when we're designing the feature. If people get on there and make,
Well, that is awesome. Awesome information. I thank you so much for that. We're kind of past the half-hour mark.
Oh yeah.
But it's been a really interesting conversation. So thank you so much, James, for joining us and sharing all your knowledge.
Thanks for having me, and keep a lookout for me on some of those places we talked about.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Been a pleasure, James. Lovely meeting you.
Okay, thanks. Likewise. You all have a good day. Thanks.
Nice seeing you again, James.
Okay, bye.